Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets with Karl, Bryan. If you want to attract new high-end coaching clients, fill live events, and build a wildly profitable coaching practice where business owners pay, stay, and refer, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, Karl provides his keys to the kingdom for finding and signing high-paying clients and building the coaching business of your dreams. Here we go.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Business Coaching Secrets, where we give you the strategies, the mindsets, and the frameworks to building your own 6 and even 7-figure coaching business. I, of course, am your host, the Road Dog, with none other than the man himself, Karl Bryan. Welcome to the show, Shoots.
Yo. Shoots. I'm not the king of the Dolphins or Dr. Karl Bryan today, Shoots. I'm okay with that.
You know why? I can tell you this right now. The reason is because we've all been upstaged today, actually yesterday, because stopped presses. I'm sure you've heard, because you have to be living under the biggest rock on the planet if you didn't hear that Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift got engaged.
They did. Shoots, did you hear, though? They had to call back the wedding.
What? What do you mean? What do you mean they called back the wedding?
Travis didn't get his knee down.
Like, ladies and gentlemen.
Honestly, I read that online and I laughed. I thought, oh my God, that's so good. That's so good. Didn't get his knee down.
Well, now that we've lost 50% of our listeners, shall we continue?
I know. It's okay.
You know what? You know what you're better at than comedy? Quotes. When I think of KB, I think little red arrow, you are here. But if you lend somebody money, make sure you lend them enough. I think you stole that one.
That's skinny. I can't take credit for that. That's my dad. That's my dad right there.
Yeah, for sure. But there's a lot of Karlisms out there. Gut, gave up thinking. That for sure. That is you. Like when I hear that, I'm like, that's Karl. But let's with that in mind. Give me some more Shoots. I'm thirsty, as the kids say, for words. Let's go.
Shoot, you're putting me on the spot. So you want a quote? All right. So a big, by the way, gut, you mentioned gave up thinking. So that's like what gut stands for. Be better to go with the data than your gut. That's not to say that your gut is not important and useful. So I'm not saying that. But anyways, okay. I'm not sure this is a quote, but I'm thinking back to my daily email and some of the things that I've dropped lately. I wrote this. Don't idolize a billionaire for their wins. Model their behavior for when they lose. Right? I think there's incredible power in that. And they look, translation, they just keep showing up. And again, there's a quote, a saying, something to the effect of you only lose when you quit trying. And not to mention the people that have what you say you want, right? Let's call that money and fame. Think Elon Musk, Ted Turner, Tim Ferriss. He's been very open with his mental struggles. Ted Turner has bipolar. Rockefeller literally lost all of his hair. Justin Bieber, I'll let you decide how that's working out for him. Kurt Cobain, Robin Williams, may they rest in peace. Like the list goes on and on and on, right? So the people that have accomplished fame and money, what they have all been, those and, many have been found to be mentally unstable or borderline suicidal. Right? And by the way, this is through the great times of their career. This isn't in the hard times. This is through the great times. You want an example of that? Just again, read Elon Musk's autobiography. And again, the reality is the man is under an enormous amount of pressure. And by the way, yes, be great. Strive for greatness. I'm all for that. But don't sacrifice your life and your mental health in the pursuit of it, is what I think the Elon Musk, the Ted Turners, and the Tim Ferrisses would tell you, right? And I said this recently. I saw a Buddhist monk get interviewed, and this hit me like a left hook right in the jaw. And he said, my goal is not to be happy. My goal is not happiness. My goal is peace. And I thought, oh, that's so good, right? So again, and happiness is fleeting, right? It's moment to moment. There's no such thing as like happiness throughout the day, happiness throughout the week, throughout the month. Everybody goes up and down. So ultimately what he's looking for is peace. And I think that that is incredible. And many people, by the way, they get to the top of Everest and then they realize that there's nobody up there to enjoy it with, right? And not to mention some serious dead bodies passed along the way, right? So that comes to mind. Here's a quote. And again, I'll make a meal of it, I'm sure. But, the highest respect isn't paid to those who have made it. The highest respect is paid to those who have made it and kept it. Okay, translation, protect your downside. But again, the ultimate respect, not for those that made a bunch of money and got a big bank balance and have a great story, which, by the way, is amazing. But it's on the other side of that where they managed to keep it. Because, your biggest regret, your greatest fear in life is not death, or shouldn't be death. It shouldn't be going broke, in my opinion. Your greatest regret should be, not having a great life, like regret not making the call, regret not building the business, regret not going to the gym, regret not defining clearly what it is that you want, regret not having time with your kids while they were young, regret not taking your kids to Disneyland when that's what you wanted to do, regret not making time for your spouse and then it potentially ending poorly, regret not, or regret worrying about what people think, I think would be up there, and just think of what your parents think, what your friends think, what your peers think, what other people on Facebook think, really horrifically is regretting what people you don't know, what they're thinking. So that I'm not doing a good job of quotes here, but anyway, so look, the goal is to have a great life. I don't think that you want to die wondering. If you pushed me, or no, so okay, two quotes. Here's two that I open up my webinar. I got to go tos because I'm struggling here, Road Dog. But anyways, you can get lucky and make it, but you can't get lucky and keep it. And then the second one is you motivate an idiot, they do stupid things quicker. And I think that there's incredible power in those quotes. And I want to go back to regret though for a minute, because you want to make sure, the goal is to have an amazing life. And if you're here, you're obviously a business coach, a business consultant, ultimately wanting to help business owners, right? You get 10 clients at $2,000 a month. And I think you can agree $2,000 a month is semi-sandbox level, right? Well, that's $240,000 a year with 80% margins. And 10 clients at $5,000 a month would be how much? That's $600,000 a year. Again, 80% margins. If that's what you define to be a great life, because you become a successful business coach, you get to be semi-retired for the rest of your life, right? I wouldn't want that to be something that you gave up on, right? And maybe in business coaching, business consulting is not for everybody. I can agree with that, but you don't want to quit, quote unquote. Think of the billionaire quote. You don't want to quit and then have to die wondering, what if I made the call? What if I did the presentation? What if I set up the JV? What if I picked up the phone a little bit more? I sent out the private messages. I posted on social media. If I read the book, if I, deployed on XYZ and what they told me to do, could it have been different? I think that would be where I don't want to end up. So anyway, shoots. Yeah, there's quotes. There you go. That's all that comes to mind, but that's all that comes to mind. Is that good?
No, it's good. It's funny whenever I think of quotes, obviously quotes typically come a lot in with personal development, professional development, that sort of thing. And it got me thinking, obviously you and I both have yet to find a personal development course that we either haven't purchased or didn't, go through. Is there one thing you think all personal development books, programs have in common? You've read enough, the whole, as Tony Robbins says, I'd have to be an idiot not to find the patterns across these things. And you've done your fair share, Shoot. So, is there something that you've seen like a common thread amongst all that?
Yeah. Yes. Good question, by the way. I think that all personal development programs either do agree on or should agree on, you need to decide what you want. One thing, clear and defined, right? Like an example, I used to use this all the time, but Kobe Bryant, right? I can show you a video. He's like 15 years old and he wanted to be the greatest basketball player of all time. He wanted to be the GOAT, right? Well, and he legitimately owned it, wanted it, and he lived his life that way. So it made life and decision making really, really easy, right? So let's play a game. If you wanted to be the GOAT of basketball, and that was your clearly defined goal outcome and what you were legitimately committed to, answer these questions. Are you going to watch your diet or are you going to not watch your diet? Answer's obvious. Are you going to stay up late and scroll social media? Or are you going to go to bed and get your 8 hours? Are you going to drink 6 beers a day? Or are you going to say no to alcohol? Are you going to train once a day or are you going to train 3 times a day? Remember, you want to be the GOAT. You want to be the greatest basketball player of all time. You don't want to make it to you don't want to get a college scholarship. You don't want to play pro and be, on the bench. You want to be the greatest of all time. Again, so are you going to train once, twice, or 3 times a day? Right? Answer's fairly obvious, right? Well, if you're going to train 3 times a day, do you need to start training at 5 a.m. or do you start at noon? Answer's pretty obvious, right? You got to get up early. So what to do becomes obvious basically. Why? Because you made that one decision. You defined the outcome clearly, succinctly, and you owned it, you wanted it, and you moved all boats in that direction. I think I messed that one up, but you know what I mean? Like, right? Like all oars are going in one direction, right? So that the boat goes where you want it to go. But the bottom line is by him doing that, it made everything really, really simple. That would actually bring me to, so I created 2 rules, right? So, there's Warren Buffett's got 2 rules of investing. What are they? Rule number 1, don't lose money. Rule number 2, see rule number 1. I'd imagine you've heard that probably many a times. So I parlay that into 2 rules of business. Rule number 1, you got to get clients. Rule number 2, you got to keep clients. That is Tesla, that is Ford, that is Coke, that is Pepsi, that is Road Dogg's company, that is my company, that is your company, right? So you got to get clients, you got to keep clients. Keeps it really, really simple when you tighten it that far down. And then so I created 2 rules of coaching, which this is somewhat new, by the way, but you know how I always say, little red arrow, you are here. And then you got to define your destination, right? Call it LA to New York, clearly defined starting line and then finishing line. So that I've changed it to, you got to create a starting line and a finishing line. Rule number 1, create a starting line. Rule number 2, create your finishing line, right? So just think like the Olympics are going to come up. There will be world records broken left, right, and center. Why? Because some guy is jumping in the pool and they're doing it in Denmark, they're doing it in Australia, they're doing it in Canada, they're doing it in the USA, they're doing it in every country, and they know exactly what the time is, and they jump in the pool, and the coach hits the stopwatch, and when they hit the wall, they stop it, and they either, they know exactly where they're at. Is that your person? At a world record, it's a personal best. You beat your time from yesterday. They're constantly tracking it. And that's why the world records and the Olympic records break so consistently, because there's a clearly defined starting line and a clearly defined finishing line. So by the way, in coaching, so the good news is that when you're working with your client, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, right? The landscaper, the realtor, the mortgage broker, etc. What you need to do is establish 2 points. You got to create the little red arrow. You got to create the starting line. Okay, where are they at? They got to gather some information, etc. I built software literally around that concept. And then you've got to create the finish line. What is it that they want to accomplish? And by the way, when they first give it to you, one of the hardest things that you will ever do in your life, potentially the hardest, quite frankly, like it's that hard, is to define clearly what it is that you want. It was easy for Kobe Bryant, a lot more difficult for the others, and that's why Kobe Bryant was Kobe Bryant. So anyways, shoots. That's my answer, buddy. How'd I do?
Love it. Love it. No, it's just Kobe, man. The that dude's story it's still, his death still haunts me to this day. I remember exactly where I was when I heard it.
Yeah.
Horrible.
I was just, as you said that, I was literally thinking of exactly where I was. And I was in an airport, looking up, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I was at an airport looking up at a TV, and it came across Kobe Bryant dead. I was like, "Oh my heavens!" Poor Parker. He would have gone on to be a billionaire. There's no question in my mind. He was already, he was,
No doubt about it, right? Like that dude was whatever he set his mind to, he got that stuff done. So, hey, I know you're big on hacks, but let's talk about hacks. Give me a business hack you haven't discussed here before.
um, you're hitting me with some hard questions here today. Shoot. I know what's going on over there.
Yeah.
Okay. So asymmetrical risk reward. And I don't know that I've not talked about it, but I don't think it's, like the Kobe Bryant one, we've probably done that 10 times at different times. So asymmetrical risk reward, if you win, it's a financial home run. And if you lose, it's a negligible financial loss is the way that I would describe it. Like Bezos, he talks about swinging doors. So a swinging door is one that you can go through, but you can also turn around and come back. So you don't want to, you don't want to go through a door that you can't come back from. Translation of that would be invest too much money in too little and then find out that, revenues aren't there, profits aren't there, and the bubble bursts, right? Um, I would say like maybe an example in our world would be a business coach keeping their job until they get a few clients and then they quit once they've got 3 clients and they feel comfortable that they're going to be, if you can get 3, you can get 10. If you can get 10, you can get 20, right? It's like rinse and repeat stuff. Although people do tend to overcomplicate that. And then they take the strategy, they do live events and get 3 clients, and then they decide that they want to, start using social media, et cetera, and not do the live events. But again, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. So if you could prove to yourself that you could get 3 clients, I would dare say it'd be safe to quit your job. There is a flip side to that maybe what you should do is you should quit your job and go all in. And I understand that line of thinking. And I would dare say that Kobe Bryant would kind of take that approach. But Kobe Bryant, would he have had 3 kids and a family to feed at that stage? And the answer is probably no. So this is where things would be a little bit different. There's dynamics and nuances to everything, right? Well, Richard Branson did exactly this. Reasonably famous story out there about when he started Virgin, the airline. He went to Boeing, and the story went a little bit like he leased 10 airplanes, and he put no money down, no money up front, right? And the understanding was that he was going to launch an airline that he thought would be highly successful. And he's obviously got a track record of success. But he said, look, if it doesn't work, I've got to be able to return the planes at no penalty. But if it does work, I'm obviously going to go on to lease and buy a ton of planes for you. So do you want to take the risk with me? And they went for it. So if you really think about it, the upside is absolutely monstrous. And the downside is reasonably negligible because he was literally just going to hand back those planes. If he would have bought the first 10 planes, then that wouldn't be defined as asymmetrical risk. Because again, the risk reward, there would be there'd be huge risk, a huge potential upside, but a huge risk. So anyway, so that's, just protecting the downside. That's a pretty common, business hack. Maybe Sam Walton, Walmart falls into that. What he did, he was famous for saying he never had an original idea in his life. What did he do? He copied what worked from others, right? So he was famous for researching his competitors, like other retailers, and he would steal their best ideas, right? And what made me kind of think of that, I spoke to a heavyweight internet marketer last week. Like this guy's done $100 million online, like not a sales call, right? Like $100 million without sales calls, kind of picture that. And what he said, and I thought was insanely clever, he goes, every McDonald's needs a Burger King, right? Every McDonald's needs a Burger King. And I was like, gosh, that's so good. And the hack that I would take from that, I guess, is that you want to avoid new. That's what he's saying. Okay. Think of cloning, right? So most people think starting a great business, you need a great product, which you do, but you don't need You don't need for that product, that service to be new and revolutionary. I think Steve Jobs might have done a little bit of damage here because he was so brilliant, so creative, and he brought us so much magical new stuff that we kind of follow his frame. And it's like, that's the way you really, really kill it. Right. But that's not the truth, right? Pizza. We had pizza last night, right? So there's Domino's Pizza, there's Pizza Hut, there's Papa John's, and so many others, including the local operator who does pretty well. There's not like one, but many pizza places that work at the same time, right? So translation, one doesn't cancel out the other, right? Abundance over scarcity, maybe mindset. Same with computers, right? So you've got Apple, that is obviously incredible, Microsoft, which is less incredible, but also incredible. Then there's Dell computers and so many others, right? But like the fact that Apple is so amazing, it doesn't cancel out the others. They can also do insanely well, right? So again, it's just think McDonald's, think Burger King. Everybody, for every McDonald's, they need a Burger King. And by the way, there's Pepsi and Coke. And again, one does not cancel out the other. And really what it does is it leads to an unbelievable amount of other drinks that can be, you got 7-Up and you got root beer, etc. Right. So just, cloning, I think that is what I'm trying to say here. Asymmetrical risk reward. You want to have as little downside as possible. And I think that if you were speaking to a billionaire, in fact, I know for a fact, if you were speaking to a billionaire, specific one, what he's going to tell you is just you want to copy what it is that others are doing. Like even the iPod came from the MP3 player, right? Like, Word, you probably used Word in the last 24 hours. Well, that comes from a product called WordPerfect, right? Excel came from Lotus 123 that I was reasonably okay at during college. Age myself here. And Netscape became Internet Explorer, right? And then Microsoft also created Bing. Like Microsoft are famous for this, right? Like they created Bing, but they did it off the back of Google, right? Or even Starbucks, right? So I had Starbucks this morning. Basically that was a cloned idea. I think he was in Italy. He was in Europe. I think he was in Italy, and he saw this really cool concept and he said, look, this is what I'm going to do. Right. So many examples. Samsung has clearly copied the iPhone. You got Visa, you got MasterCard. I'm wearing a pair of Nikes right now. I don't know who Nike's biggest competitor is, but I'm going to say Adidas probably. Okay, so hang on. So now I feel like I'm going a little high level business here. Let's go to the landscaper. Okay, so how can he leverage that? How can she leverage that? How does that make sense? Well, rather than coming up with something new, something revolutionary, a new campaign, a new offer, a new service, a new offering, to their high-end clients, etc., what they should do is get on the phone, get on the internet, get on, Grok or ChatGPT, and start researching what are the top landscaping companies in the world doing? What are, let's say LA. Without going to LA, we all know that LA is going to be more competitive than, a small town in Wisconsin, right? Okay, well, I'm not going to the small town in Wisconsin, although that might be a good idea as well. But what are the landscapers in LA doing? What are the landscapers in New York doing? What are the landscapers in Sydney, in London, in Brisbane, Australia, in Toronto, Ontario, Canada? What are they doing, right? And then effectively, there's the roadmap. And what do they got to do? They've got to follow it. Or no, they don't have to do anything. But if they did, they would be creating, a Burger King to the McDonald's. Actually, that's probably not the best example. They would be cloning in that instance, right? And the roofer should do the same thing. So all that to say, reinventing the wheel can be very expensive. I said time and time again, trial and error is probably one of the worst strategies ever in business. It is very popular. It is very expensive, and I laugh because it has cost me a lot of money. Whoopsie, I would have been significantly better off cloning as opposed to the other. So anyways, shoots, asymmetrical risk reward, a business coach starting a podcast, very little downside, very large upside. I can tell you some of our best clients, guess where they come from? They come from this podcast, and not the small potatoes folks, but like the the PhDs and the private equity folks and the heavyweights that are doing big things. A lot of them come from this podcast. So and a YouTube channel, very low downside, very high upside. And by the way, it's going to take a lot of work and it's going to take some strategy and you're going to have to show up and you're going to have to be consistent, but there could be some magic there. Anyways, asymmetrical risk reward shoots. And by the way, before I throw back to you, and that when you read Tony Robbins' book, Money Mastered the Game, he will tell you that, he reverse engineered the billionaires and the most successful people of all time, not mommy and daddy gold card rich, but self-made. And asymmetrical risks was one of the primary strategies from the book that he said they all had in common. So very little downside, very high upside. That's my answer, Shoots.
Can I just add to that? Like, you talk about the landscaper and you talk about using Grok or ChatGPT. Like, yes, please do it. Like, the amount of value and insight and information and getting it to actually just do the strategy for you is insane. Like, there is literally no excuse anymore these days to not get stuff done. It's wild to me, dude. It's wild. Like, wouldn't you be able to go in and say, let's say Kelowna, and go, like, here's the top websites of the Kelowna landscapers. What are the biggest holes or what are the biggest opportunities that you see that I could implement in my business? Like,
yep.
Why not give that a go? Right? It's crazy to me. So
I got to tell you, like our own product, like AI Coach Assist, even within that, I guess it continues to learn as more people are using it and whatnot. It's insanely popular very, very quickly, I got to tell you, but we have already made dramatic, like we launched it, it would have been 10 days ago. And we have already, learned. This is the 2.0 version, by the way. We've had it for a long time, but this is the 2.0. But it's just unbelievable. The learnings already, and then not to mention some AI agents we've got coming. It's pretty crazy, man. Like, it moves so fast and it can do so much. It really is gobsmacking, bud. So I'm with you.
Well, and again, we talk about coaching mistakes. Like, there's one right there, right? Like, I think if you're not using AI, if your clients aren't using AI, that's a huge mistake. But anyways, given the mistakes in the business coaching industry, and that's one of them, what's another mistake or something, I guess popular in the coaching industry that doesn't serve coaches well? Let's go the other way.
Mistakes. Okay, so we've covered a few of these. I would say, in fact, I watched a video last night, and they were just talking, so direct response, which is pretty famous in our industry. Okay, Dan Kennedy made it famous, and God bless Dan Kennedy, brilliant human being. But he would always talk down brand. I've got to tell you that if you listen, let's use Alex Hormozy as an example. He will scream from the absolute top of the mountain that it is brand over direct response all day long, twice on Sunday. You got a purse. Okay, translation, you got a purse, and it can sell for $20. It can sell for $200. It can sell for $2,000, but it can also sell for $20,000. What's the difference between the $20 and $200 purse versus a purse that's going to sell for $20,000? And the answer is brand. And you would never in a million years sell a purse for $20,000 if you didn't have brand. But also brand takes time, takes money, takes resources, etc. You do not build a brand overnight, over the weekend, over a couple of weeks or even a quarter. I mean, this is something that takes time, right? So, consistency, etc. So there needs to be a blend of it. But I can tell you that our industry has gone away from direct response, which is what it's always talked about. And it's moving towards brand. I would say another one, the 10,000 hours. This is one, again, pretty popular in our industry. The science says that it's wrong, right? Like it's 10,000 attempts. It's 10,000 repetitions. That would be significantly more accurate, right? Like it's focused practice. And by the way, somebody's age, somebody's experience, somebody's expertise will wildly adjust the 10,000 hour framework, right? But like an example would be Steph Curry, right? So he's practicing, I got no idea, but let's say he's doing 500 3-pointers a day, right? It's focused practice. It's focused repetitions, right? And it's all aimed at a specific skill, right? So translation, the 10,000 hour rule it's not the best framework. It's better than no framework. That's for darn sure. You'd like to think if you did something for 10,000 hours, you get pretty damn good at it. But the science clearly states that repetitions and attempts. So if I were to give you a framework, 1, 2, 3, it would be like 1, focused repetitions towards a defined goal. Okay, that's Steph Curry hitting, 90% of his 3-point shots, right? And then if you went to the second thing, it would be you got to push beyond your comfort zone. Okay, so that's Steph Curry. He didn't start, shooting 3-pointers, right? He started underneath the basket and then he moved back a foot and then he moved back a foot and then he moved back a foot and then he moved back a foot. Next thing you know, he's at the 3-point line and he's killing it, right? So you got to go beyond your comfort zone, but do it in a calculated, intelligent way. And then the third thing you need a feedback loop to correct weaknesses. So again, if Steph finds that, from a particular spot or a particular angle, that he's not hitting him as well as he is somewhere else, well, it's probably going to be in his elbow placement. It's going to be in, his fall, whatever it's going to be. Probably his elbow, if you know about shooting a basketball. and I'm not that damn good at it, but I can throw a free throws reasonably well. Your elbow needs to be pointing towards that basket. That's the hack. So that's an example of what a feedback loop where you'd correct the weakness. They get a road dog, you're going to laugh at that one. But anyway, so there you go. 1, 2, 3, focused repetitions, go beyond comfort. And then the third thing is you need a feedback loop so that you're improving a little bit. On mistakes, I'm also going to say this. There's a book, Atomic Habits, that I think we talked about last week or the week before. But look, it's sold 5 million copies. It is quoted time and time and time again. Unbelievable book, to be clear, right? I've read it. It's great. I've recommended it. The problem is, though, habit by nature means that you're on autopilot. And what I was just describing, like you need to be intentional, not habitual. In fact, I'm pretty sure the author himself, James Clear, who, by the way, super smart guy, incredible content out there. But I think he would say that deliberate work would be more powerful than being habitual, right? So deliberate work, being very clear. It's having a clearly defined outcome would be an example of that. You're clearly, you want the boat to go faster. How do you make the boat go faster? By everybody pushing in time and together and at the same repetition, right? Same time, having the same timing, right? Anyway, so that is one. Careful with being habitual. That, it's like the guy lifting weights and he's doing it in the improper way, right? What happens ends up with an injury. That's what ends up, because it doesn't happen immediately. It only happens once he goes higher in weight, getting outside of his comfort zone. So you don't feel it at first, but all of a sudden, if he didn't have the feedback loop to correct it, the injury ends up happening, right? Shoots, I want to do one more, just comes to mind. That would be the book, The E-Myth. So within the book, I can't remember, I don't know how, I haven't read that for ages, but it defines, I believe it's the entrepreneur, the operator, and then the manager. No, it's technician. It's entrepreneur, technician, and then manager, I believe. And I think there's only 3 of them, right? But they're different skill sets, right? And he's like saying, okay, well, you're either an entrepreneur, you're either a technician, or you're a manager, right? And I don't think that's the way to think about it. I want you to think of it as a wardrobe, right? So rather than an identity, you're wearing a wardrobe. And sometimes you're the entrepreneur, sometimes you're the manager, and then sometimes you're the operator, right? So said in a more effective way, sometimes you're working in the business, and then sometimes you're working on the business. But if you work on the business 24/7 and not in it, I got bad news. You're not going to get very far, right? But if you also work in it and you do not work on it, guess what? You're also not going to be able to get very far. So the solution to that is you got to interchange like a wardrobe. You got to work in it, and then you got to work on it. You got to work on it, and then you got to work in it. Like, let's go to your personal life, which might be easier to get our head around. But you're a father, you're a husband, you're an entrepreneur, you're a provider, you're the funny guy, the serious guy, you're the disciplinarian, and then you're the fun dad. If dad who is only a disciplinarian, what's his relationship like with his children? You don't need to see the dynamic, and you can probably think of somebody as I say that, right? Well, you need to do, but some if you're never the disciplinarian, how do the kids work out? And I don't need to tell you how the story ends, because again, you've probably got examples of your life where you saw parents that were just never disciplining and just always a little bit too, you know what I mean? Too lackadaisical. But there's a time to be lackadaisical, and there's a time to be, the disciplinarian. So you need all sides of the wardrobe. You don't want to think of, all of a sudden you become a husband, you become a father, you become an entrepreneur. It's not like a set identity. It's one that you move in and out of. And I think that there's incredible power. So within your own business, sometimes you're going to have to be on, like if you do live events, sometimes you're going to be there operating and doing the live event. Well, if you didn't take the time to work on your business, to work, create your jokes, to create your examples, to create your metaphors, to create your stories, to create the content, to create the workbook, etc., then I don't need to come to the presentation to know that it's not going to be all that it could be, right? And I think that there's an argument to say if people are going to spend an hour and a half with you on a Tuesday morning or whatever the case may be, there's a level of respect required, in order for you to respect their time, to make sure that you do that working on the business before you get there, to make sure that they have a wonderful experience. So anyways, thinking of it, identities, we all have identity, good, bad, and different. Topic for another day. What you need to be comfortable with, in my opinion, especially as an entrepreneur who wants to be successful, who, yes, you want to make lots of money and maybe you want to become semi-famous online, etc. God bless you if that's your goal. What you really want to do is have an amazing life, right? Well, I think a great way to not ending up having an amazing life is getting too set on the identity. Like what happens to the entrepreneur who adopts the identity of an entrepreneur, and then business is going sideways? Do we need to meet them? Do we need to meet her to know how they're feeling and how they're showing up for their family, for their friends, etc.? So you've got to be able to disassociate it. Shoots, before I throw back to you, I got a buddy. He used to play professional, Aussie rules football, right? So he was a real, he was a professional Aussie rules football player, right? He played for Hawthorn, and he would have a bad game. So my ex, in Australia, he dated her sister, right? So we were, close, and we spent tons of time together. My heavens, when this guy had a bad game, and we, used to have a few drinks, and we had a great life going on there. There's no doubt about it. We were going out and having a lot of fun, lots of friends around, etc. Well, we would be out hooting and hollering, having a great time. Do you know where he'd be? He'd be in his room in like the fetal position. Why? Because he had a bad game. And how does that end up? His identity was so wrapped up in being a professional footy player. That's what Aussie rules. That's, you refer to it as footy. But at the end of the day, he's a professional footy player, and his entire identity was wrapped up in that. So you got to be careful, right? And that said, I think you should, between 9 and 5, let's call it, or your 8 to 10 hours during the day, be totally dialed in and have the identity of an entrepreneur. But once you walk out of that office, close the computer, put down the phone, and you walk up to spend time with your family, or you walk in the door to spend time with your family, you've now got to become a husband. You've got to become a father. You got to become the funny guy. You got to become the serious guy. You got to become the, disciplinarian in some cases, but not all cases. Anyways, that's a wardrobe shoots. That's what I'm trying to say. I think the big one, and what I just said, I would go to the 10,000 hours being a bit of a mistake, and something that is adopted to be gospel in our industry that is off. And I think that we would all be well served to say 10,000 repetitions. right? So it's not about, being a coach for 10,000 hours. It's having 10,000 hours or 10,000 reps of trying to close a client, and then having 10,000 reps of keeping a client on the railroad tracks, not letting them get derailed by way of, we got to control your costs. We got to increase your prices. We got to create a market dominating position. We got to create an upsell, a downsell, a cross sell. We got to create a drip campaign. We got to work on lead generation, etc. Like going to the core 12 areas of their business and really dialing it in, we're going to be able to take our clients to significantly greater coaches significantly faster. So anyway, so there you go, Shades. That's my answer, bud.
Awesome, dude. Hey, listen, obviously there was a few Easter eggs that you laid out here today. Why don't you close us out and give our listeners one thing, the famous one thing that they can implement and start doing from today's podcast?
Shoots. I'm going to do two things. I hope you don't mind. Number one, easily, is cloning. You don't trying to and I have spent, if 2 words, new and next. I trial and error, cost me a lot of money. 2 words have cost me significantly more. New and next, new and next. Just find what others are doing. So behalf of your clients, the landscaper, butcher, baker, candlestick maker, just find what others are doing successfully. And then when I say copy it, we're not talking about stealing it, but I am talking about copying it, right? Like again, Steve Jobs, the iPod came from the MP3 player, right? So cloning, for sure. Then the other one, and we haven't covered this in a long time. I haven't told this story in a long time, and it's just a bloody beauty, but it's Kobe Bryant. I think you asked me like, what is, all personal development coaching programs or whatever, what do they all agree on, or what's the same about them all? And I'm like, um, they all agree that you need to know what you want in order to get there. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there, right? So the Kobe Bryant story of like, he wanted to be the greatest basketball player of all time. So I said, okay, so channel your inner Kobe Bryant. I'm going to ask you a question. There's vegetables, there's chocolate. Which one are you taking? You know the answer. Is it go to bed at, 8:30 at night, or go to bed at 1 a.m.? You know the answer. Is it train once a day and start at noon, or is it train 3 times a day and start at 4 a.m.? We know the answer, right? So by clearly defining what it is that you want, and it doesn't need to be this grand, awesome, the lifetime 25-year goal, although that would be amazing, and then work backwards. But right now, depending upon where you're at, and if you're in the sandbox a little bit, just create that. I always say how bad of a goal it is to want to make $10,000 a month or to make that your goal, right? But the truth is, if you're in the sandbox, that $10,000 a month can allow you to start thinking bigger, to allow you to start operating at a higher level, to allow you to start picking and choosing different things to, create options for you, right? So if that's where you're at, and you're not at 10 grand a month, 120 grand a year in coaching fees, then that's not a bad, like hell or high water, you got to get there. But once you get there, what you got to do is you got to move the goalposts, but in an intelligent way, right? So then it becomes, okay, I'm going to run a local live event. Like this is a better goal, to run a local live event for 10 people every Tuesday at the Chamber of Commerce, come hell or high water. I will be there, and there will be approximately 10 warm bodies there. And by the time 12 months is up, I'm going to tell you that you will have more coaching clients than you could possibly count. You will become a local legend because you'll be consistent, do the same venue over and over and over again. In an ideal world, that's not always going to be possible, but that would be the ideal frame. You'd be super consistent. You'd be amazed at how far you could go. But no doubt, hopefully you're getting what I'm picking up there. Kobe Bryant wanted to be the greatest basketball player of all time. Decision fatigue is a thing. His decisions were really, really easy because he knew exactly what he wanted, and he stayed on point for literally decades. And, and by the way, in his opinion, he accomplished it. Michael Jordan will say no, LeBron James will say no, and many others will say no. But Kobe Bryant believes that he became the greatest of all time. In his opinion, he did. And there's an interview where he literally says it, and he's proud to say it. Anyway, shits, and may he rest in peace, by the way. That's all I got.
I wasn't sure if I would just ask the one thing or for another in-depth answer on another question there, Shoots. Anyways, Rabbit Hole City. Thanks everybody for tuning in to another episode of Business Coaching Secrets. And again, if you're not on the inside and getting access to the pre-show, or you aren't getting Karl's daily emails, or you just want information on how to build, grow, and scale your coaching company, visit focused.com and subscribe today. Also, of course, if you enjoyed the podcast, please like and subscribe, and also share with a fellow coach, as we are trying to make our impact on as many coaches as possible. Hey, and while you're at it, please feel free to leave us a review. Well, that is it for another week. We will see you in the next episode. And remember, folks, progress equals happiness. Take care, everybody.
Karl Bryan built Profit Acceleration Software 2.0. So as a business coach, you'll never again have to worry about working with business owners that can't afford your high-end coaching fees. Check us out at focused.com.